You have a lot of pride in what you do. You still believe you are a major league player, and you're also not taking $1 million just over the minimum or even $2 million. Welcome everyone to the Monday edition of Fair Territory. Have a little bit of a different show in store for you today. I get a lot of complaints that all we talk about and all I write about are the Dodgers and the Mets and the Yankees. So today, even though that is not true, we're going to do something a little bit, out of the ordinary. We are going to go through the 5 teams that I believe are the most improved who are not named the Dodgers, Mets, and the Yankees. In fact, I'm not even totally convinced the Mets and Yankees are that improved. They're good, no question about it. But significantly improved, that's a debate for another day because we're not talking about them today. We're talking about other teams. So I'm going to take you through these 5 teams, discuss them a little bit in depth, each of them. And obviously you guys are free to disagree, but I think these 5 teams have done a decent job this offseason of putting themselves in a better position. Let's start with my first team. We're not doing this in any particular order, but my first team is the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now, they made one huge move this offseason. Of course, that was the signing of Corbin Burnes that came out of nowhere. But the Diamondbacks, if you look at their entirety of the additions that they've made, it's pretty good. Now, granted, they lost Christian Walker, and that was a big loss. But they traded for Josh Naylor, who is in his free agent year, and they believe will be a sufficient replacement for Walker, who, of course, was an offensive and defensive stalwart for them for many years. Randall Grichuk, bringing him back, that's a good move for them. Kendall Graveman supplements the bullpen, and the big move, of course, is Burnes. And what I love about the Diamondbacks, if they can keep their rotation intact into October, assuming they get there, would be the ability of them to throw out in a playoff series Corbin Burnes, Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Eduardo Rodriguez in some order. That's pretty good. And for all the talk about the Dodgers and how they're invincible in a best-of-5 division series, even a best-of-7 NLCS, I would give the Diamondbacks a puncher's chance. They've lost Jock Peterson, I know. They've lost Christian Walker. They've lost some pieces, as all teams do. But the addition of Burnes makes them quite interesting, to say the least. The next team on my list, a team that really hasn't made dramatic player moves per se, but added a manager who is perhaps the biggest difference maker, or one of them, in the game among major league managers. I'm talking, of course, about Terry Francona, the new manager of the Cincinnati Reds. Now, when you look at the Reds board and their moves, Brady Singer, we'll see how he does in Great American Ballpark. Jose Trevino, certainly an adequate and even better than that catcher. Austin Hayes, Gavin Lux, Nick Martinez coming back, Brent Suter coming back. They've also added Scott Barlow to the bullpen. Are any of those guys 4-WAR players or anything like that? Perhaps not. But they've added some depth. They've got Matt McClain coming back to be the second baseman, or at least play a lot of second base. I just kind of like where they are, and it seems to me that with all the injuries they had last year and some regression as well among their position players, Francona coming into a good situation here. We'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. And again, the Reds are not the Dodgers, but at the same time, in that division, which is a weak division, the NL Central, the Reds could be about to take a step up. The team I next want to talk about is the team that made the Brady Singer trade with the Cincinnati Reds, and that team would be the Kansas City Royals. You remember that trade? Singer to the Reds, Jonathan India and Joey Wiemer to the Royals. That's a trade that the Royals believe is going to help them significantly because India will hit leadoff in front of Bobby Witt Jr. You see the Royals' other moves. Re-signing Michael Wacha. That was the big one at the start of the offseason. And when you look at that deal now, 3 years, $51 million, it looks a lot better considering what some of the other starting pitchers got. Michael Lorenzen back as well. And then the big late move for Carlos Estevez. Estevez and Lucas Erceg at the back end of that bullpen could be a pretty fearsome combination. So I like what the Royals have done. It's nothing terribly dramatic, but they were pretty good last year, of course, made the playoffs. And I expect them to be decent as well this year. Remains to be seen how India is going to perform, how he's going to fit in to that situation there. The Royals have a pretty good thing going, and I expect that to continue this season. Now, the next team I want to talk about is a little bit further south of Kansas City. Well, maybe a lot further south. That would be the Texas Rangers, the 2023 World Series champions who took a pretty big step back last year in large part because their offense was unproductive. So the Rangers this offseason, they had some significant challenges in front of them. First, they wanted to re-sign Nathan Eovaldi. They did that. They also traded Nathaniel Lowe, brought in Jake Berger, signed Jock Peterson, brought in Kyle Higashioka as a free agent as well. And the other big challenge that they faced, and you can see it right here with some of the additions on the lower half of that screen, they lost almost their entire bullpen. Kirby Yates, David Robertson, Jose Leclerc, among others. So they brought in Chris Martin, John Armstrong, Hobie Milner, Jacob Webb, and Luke Jackson. Now, Bruce Bochy, their manager, is going to need to figure out their bullpen as the season progresses. And that's something really that is a challenge for every team. But I do believe that Texas's offense will be better. I believe they're going to bounce back. Jock will be a big addition for them. So will Jake Berger. They're a team also that is getting some injured players back. Evan Carter could be one. Josh Young, another one. So they should be in a much better position in what looks to be a hotly contested AL West, with Seattle and Houston both being quite good, and the projection systems show that Texas, Houston, and Seattle are all but even. The Angels are better, and the A's are better. We'll be back after a quick word from our friends at Foul Territory.
Life comes at you fast. Make life easier and healthier with Green Chef. Stay on track, even on your busiest days, with options like salads, ready in 5 minutes or less, and ready to blend smoothies.
You'll get pre-made sauces, pre-portioned ingredients to enjoy restaurant-quality meals for the #1 meal kit for eating well.
If you're like, wait, what about HelloFresh? Green Chef is owned by HelloFresh with a lovely array of meal plans to choose from. We love them both dearly. I switch between brands, and now our listeners can enjoy both brands at a discount.
Scott, I made the shrimp rice dish with corn and roasted cashews last night. It was fire. It came with a high-quality, organic, fresh produce that I love, so my whole family can eat clean.
Thrive all year with clean, easy meals from Green Chef. Go to greenchef.com/territory-free and use code territory-free to get started with free salads for 2 months, plus 50% off your first box. That's greenchef.com/territory-free and use that code territory-free.
And finally, the Boston Red Sox. Now, I don't know that they're my most improved team, but I'm saving them for last because they are going to be really interesting. Now, Bregman, of course, is the latest addition. We don't know where he's going to play just yet exactly, but this is a pretty interesting group, to say the least, that they've brought in. The big trade for Crochet, I expect to sign him to an extension. Walker Buehler, that one's a little bit of a wild card. Sandoval won't be around until the second half, if that. And then the lefties in the bullpen, Chapman and Justin Wilson. And this catcher, Carlos Narvaez, who came from the Yankees, who a lot of people that were with the Yankees were really high on. The Red Sox are going to be better. And on that list, I did not include their big prospects. Roman Anthony, who likely will play a role. Christian Campbell, who could open the season with the team. And Marcelo Meyer, who at some point could join this club as well. So the Red Sox are on the upswing here. And I don't know how it's going to play out for them. I don't know how it's going to play out for anyone. But they are going to be a team to watch. And perhaps now we'll see the Yankees-Red Sox rivalry rekindled for real. So those are my 5 teams that I believe are the most improved. And I left some off this list as well. Again, we're talking about the teams that are not in New York and the teams that are not named the Los Angeles Dodgers. The teams I considered for this list were the Chicago Cubs. That was one. The Kyle Tucker addition alone was a big one. They also get Ryan Presley, Matthew Boyd. They should be a much better group. And then Justin Turner, their latest addition. I also looked at the Angels and the A's. The Angels, they've built an interesting roster. Now, I don't trust the Angels. No one should. We don't know if Mike Trout's going to stay healthy. We know Rendon is already out. But they brought in Kikuchi. They brought in Kenley Jansen. They brought in Jorge Soler, Travis d'Arnaud. A number of solid type veterans. High character guys, too. So they should be better, especially if Trout stays on the field. How much better, I don't know. And then Oakland, at least they have tried. Attention, Miami, Pittsburgh, etc. The A's have tried harder than you have. The A's this offseason, they made their big move for Luis Severino. They also traded for Jeffrey Springs, added Gio Urshela, and did some lesser moves around the margins as well. They actually signed Jose Leclerc from the Rangers, the free agent that he was this offseason. So a number of teams have different looks. A number of teams will be better, and we'll be paying attention. And I'll be writing about and talking about a number of teams that aren't the Mets, the Yankees, and the Dodgers. I always do that, actually. Time now for the Inside Dish, the part of the show where I talk about maybe something I've written, maybe a trend in the game, maybe something else entirely. And today I want to talk about a player that I wrote about a few days ago, Anthony Rizzo. I combined on that article with Brendan Cuddy of The Athletic, and the article was basically an interview with Rizzo about his current situation. He is still a free agent, and in a year in which a lot of free agent first basemen have signed, he's still out there. He's still unemployed. And at the age of 35, he acknowledged to me that this could be the end of his career. Now, he doesn't want that to happen. He feels healthy for the first time in a long while. Remember, last year he had a couple of injuries that kept him on the IL. The year before he had the concussion. So it's really been 2 years of injury-marred seasons and decline in offensive ability as well. And of course, we've seen Rizzo for years now. He had been quite a consistent player, and the last 2 years just haven't been up to his previous standard. We know that. So the question is, can Anthony Rizzo still be a contributor? And will a team see fit to give him the money that he believes is appropriate for a player of his ability and past accomplishment? Now, I know, and we all know, that teams base salaries on what they believe players can do in the future. And Rizzo said one thing to me in our interview that a lot of people, at least in the comments and the responses on Twitter, I don't know if taking offense would be the right word, but people kind of looked at this comment and said, whoa, what is he talking about? And the comment was about when he said, hey, teams are basically offering me the minimum, and I'm not going to do anything that's going to set back future generations of players. And the responses were essentially, hey, what is Anthony Rizzo going to do if he takes $3 million to set back future generations of players? Let me try to explain. And I know money is a sensitive issue for all of us, really. And a lot of us cannot understand how baseball players can ever not want to play, even for the minimum salary, which is this year $760,000. Well, covering this game for almost 40 years now, I've come to learn that players, like the rest of us, view themselves, judge themselves with regard to salary as it compares to their peers. So they want to be paid and compensated appropriately based on what their peers are making. That's where this all starts. That's when you see players say, well, I'm not playing for that. I don't like that. It's not that they don't think 2 million or 3 million or 4 million or 10 or 15 or 50 million is an appropriate number for them. They think if player X is getting this, then I should be getting that. That's just how they think. So Rizzo, you might say, well, if he takes 2 million, how is that setting back future generations of players? He seems to think that the next group of older free agent first basemen will be in a position where that salary, if he takes a really low salary, will be held against them. And what I mean by that is, let's say in a year from now or 2 years from now, Anthony Rizzo's $2 million salary is out there and comparable free agent first basemen are out there. They'll be judged against the 2 million. Teams will say, Anthony Rizzo took 2 million. You're taking that or less. And in many cases, it will be less because the players will not have the resume that Anthony Rizzo does. I don't believe that fans reading that, people seeing those comments should have been offended by it. And I understand that it's difficult to comprehend what these guys are talking about sometimes. And let's face it, players also sometimes make mistakes in judging their values. Anthony Rizzo might even be an example of that. If you remember, back in March 2021, I reported that he had turned down a 5-year, $70 million extension from the Cubs that was entering his free agent year with the Cubs. And he felt at the time that he would be able to exceed that number over the course of 5 years in his free agent period. Turns out that he hasn't done that. He has gotten $56 million, not $70 million, over the time period. This would be the 5th year, and it doesn't look like he's getting $14 million this year, so perhaps, in retrospect, Rizzo should have taken that extension. But I want people to remember, these guys, as I said earlier, are just like the rest of us. They have a lot of pride in what they do. They value themselves at a certain number, and sometimes maybe teams don't value them the same. Sometimes maybe teams them. But they go about it in a way that all of us would probably go about it if we were major league players as well. And I know fans out there sometimes think they're playing a kid's game. They should be grateful just to make any money at all. Well, it doesn't work exactly like that. And what we see every year at this time of year is a group of free agents who are still unemployed. And you wonder, well, what's going to happen to these guys? Well, players do get weeded out of the game. I'm not saying Rizzo is going to be one of them. Maybe someone will get hurt, and maybe some team will make him an offer he feels is appropriate for a player of his ability. But there are a lot of players still out there. Jose Quintana among the pitchers who are still out there. David Robertson, Phil Maton among the relievers. Lance Lynn is another one. Kyle Gibson, another one. Andrew Heaney just signed last week. So I don't know if any of those players are going to come back or not, but if you're a Lance Lynn or a Kyle Gibson and teams are offering you non-roster spots, minor league contracts, you're not taking it. You have a lot of pride in what you do. You still believe you are a major league player, and you're also not taking $1 million just over the minimum or even $2 million. You want to be compensated fairly in your mind. Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, they're looking at a situation where a lot of starting pitchers this year got $10 million or more. Some of them who are not all that accomplished. So they're saying, hey, where's mine? Sometimes that leads to a player having to end his career prematurely. But again, I'm just trying to explain the thought process here. You don't have to like it. You don't even have to understand it. But in the end, they're thinking like you and I would think. They're seeking what they believe is fair compensation. Sometimes it works out, and sometimes it doesn't. Time now for Grillin Ken, the part of the show where I answer your questions. First question comes from Abraham, who asks, most surprising free agent remaining? Abraham, I just mentioned this in the previous segment, but for me, it's Jose Quintana. This guy is a quality major league starter. Second half of last season, 3.18 ERA. He was a reliable fixture for the New York Mets going down the stretch. And he's a guy that I understand why he's not getting maybe the attention you would think he would. He doesn't miss a lot of bats. He's more of a craftsman than a hard thrower. And we all know that teams today, what they value is missing bats. That said, Jose Quintana is a quality major league pitcher. He should be in a camp somewhere on a major league contract at a salary commensurate with his skill level. So to me, that is the most surprising one of all of them, that he is still not signed because, frankly, he is as good as some of the pitchers who have signed, and he's at a stage of his career where he is still capable of making a significant contribution to a club. Next question comes from Pepper, who asks, is there an argument that the Guardians will be better this year despite losing Naylor and Jimenez? Pepper, I did not include the Guardians on my list of most improved teams, and it is possible, as you suggest, that they could be better. They've replaced Naylor with Carlos Santana. They've got Brito coming in at second base and the great prospect, the number one pick of last year's draft, Travis Pizzana, in the wings. So the loss of those two players, while significant and should not be underplayed, is not necessarily going to be something where they're that much worse off. They've got some interesting things happening. John Means, they just signed him. Him and Shane Bieber are possibilities for the rotation in the second half. They're both coming off surgeries and they're both rehabilitating right now. So I expect that could be a significant boost. Remember, they've traded for Luis L. Ortiz from the Pirates, so he will add to the rotation as well. They've got Paul Sewald in the bullpen, and they're bringing back Austin Hedges to be a backup catcher. They'll be okay, and they'll be competitive as they always seem to be in the AL Central. But if you're asking if they're going to be better without Naylor and Jimenez, I don't know if better is the right word. There is the potential there, and they're certainly going to be different, but I'm not so sure they're going to be improved, particularly at those two spots. Though Carlos Santana had a great year last year, first Gold Glove, and they're quite excited about the young second baseman. We'll see. All right, final question. This one comes from Joseph. Joseph, who asks, who is your one surprise team this year? Joseph, I'm suspecting a number of people are going to pick the A's as a surprise this year, simply because they've added, and they've done that for the first time in a while, and they've got some pretty talented pieces. They've added Severino and Jeffrey Springs and Jose Leclerc in the bullpen, and yes, they should be better. But my surprise team, my biggest surprise team, is going to be one I referenced earlier, and I believe it's the Cincinnati Reds. And the reason I think that is the reason I stated earlier. The arrival of Terry Francona to a team that is talented, but has yet to really put it all together. So because of what they've done, kind of adding pieces around the edges, and because of the addition of Francona, they're going to be my biggest surprise. They're the one team I believe will take a major step forward in a division that is pretty darn weak. Let's face it. Yes, the Cubs are good with Kyle Tucker. Okay. but the Cardinals are in a reset. The Pirates are spinning their wheels as they always spin their wheels. The Brewers are a team that you look at and say, well, they're always good. And we thought last year they were going to take a step back, but they've done absolutely nothing or next to it this offseason. And I actually believe this could be the year they suffer a bit. I want to thank everyone for watching and listening. Rate the show 5 stars. Give us that kind of review wherever you get your podcasts. And bring your Grillin Ken questions as well. I'll answer the best ones during Thursday's show. We'll be back live Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Myself and Alanna Rizzo. Join us.
From February 16th until March 2nd, players can join in on the BetMGM Poker Winter Online Championships. Players can compete for a prize pool of over $1.5 million guaranteed in 21 trophy events. Play your cards right in the Winter Online Championships, and you could also claim a share of an additional $10,000 on the Winter Online Championships leaderboard. Gambling problem or concern? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.